They were the most prolific songwriters of that time,
Mick Jagger has heaped praise on the Beatles, labeling them as the most prolific songwriters of that time, while reflecting on the astonishing output of John Lennon and Paul McCartney during the height of Beatlemania. Although history has often painted the Beatles and the Rolling Stones as fierce rivals throughout the 1960s, the relationship between the two legendary British bands was far more friendly than the headline suggested. In fact, before the Rolling Stones had even established themselves as chart stars, it was Lennon and McCartney who helped give Mick Jagger and Keith Richards their first major breakthrough by offering them I Wanna Be Your Man in 1963. The song became the Stones' first UK top 20 hit and marked an important moment in their rise, while the Beatles later recorded their own version with the Beatles. It also demonstrated just how effortlessly Lennon and McCartney were writing songs during that remarkable period. At the time, the Beatles seemed to have more material than they could possibly record themselves. Rather than letting songs go unused, the songwriting partnership frequently passed compositions onto other artists. Peter and Gordon scored a #1 hit with A World Without Love. Billy J. Kramer enjoyed several Lennon-McCartney compositions. Cilla Black became one of Britain's biggest stars thanks in part to songs written especially for her, while the Applejacks also benefited from the duo's seemingly endless creativity. Speaking to SiriusXM's classic vinyl to coincide with the release of the Rolling Stones' new album, Foreign Tongues, Jagger looked back on that extraordinary era and explained why the Beatles stood apart from every other band of their generation.
The most prolific songwriters of that time, they wrote all these songs for themselves, which are all huge hits that come out all the time. Plus, they were giving songs that they maybe had done as demos, and for all these disparate people, like Cilla Black and this one and that one, all had huge hits with songs which the Beatles wrote, including us. So we were all really happy to get them, and it just made them into this huge writing machine, that they were amazingly prolific.
Jagger's comments echo what many musicians have said for decades. Between 1962 and 1970, Lennon and McCartney produced one of the most extraordinary catalogs in popular music history. Beyond writing dozens of top-charting singles for the Beatles, they continuously experimented with new musical styles, moving from straightforward rock and roll to folk, psychedelia, Indian music, orchestral pop, and avant-garde experimentation, often reinventing themselves from one album to the next. Their productivity became so legendary that fellow musicians often wondered how they managed to maintain such an extraordinary pace. By the middle of the decade, they weren't simply writing enough material for their own albums, they had become one of Britain's most sought-after songwriting teams, supplying future classics to numerous artists while simultaneously dominating the charts themselves. The praise is particularly significant given the long-standing comparisons between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Throughout the 1960s, the British music press frequently encouraged the idea of a rivalry, portraying the Beatles as the polished, clean-cut pop group and the Stones as their rebellious, blues-driven counterparts. In reality, the bands respected one another, socialized together, and occasionally collaborated. Lennon and McCartney even contributed backing vocals to the Rolling Stones' 1967 single, We Love You, further highlighting the close relationship between the two camps. Jagger's latest comments arrive as the Rolling Stones continue their collaboration with Paul McCartney on Covered in You, a track from Foreign Tongues. McCartney recorded his bass contribution during the same sessions that produced Bite My Head Off for the Stones' 2023 album Hackney Diamonds. Both records were produced by Andrew Watt, who also worked closely with McCartney on his recent album, The Boys of Dungeon Lane. Watt's involvement ultimately helped reunite two of Britain's greatest musical icons in the studio once again, more than 60 years after their careers first became intertwined. Earlier this week, Keith Richards also reflected on working with McCartney during an interview with Apple Music's Zane Lowe, suggesting that the former Beatle still thrives in the atmosphere of a band.
Well, yeah, I realize that Paul really misses being in a band, and his joy of just being in that context is great. So if there's got any more songs to do, I'll let you know, Paul.
Richards also reminisced about the long friendship between the two groups, recalling how Lennon and McCartney had provided backing vocals on We Love You and Dandelion during the late 1960s. More than 60 years after Beatlemania first transformed popular music, the friendship between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones continues to produce memorable moments. And coming from one of rock's most celebrated frontmen, Jagger's description of the Beatles as the most prolific songwriters of that time serves as another reminder of just how extraordinary Lennon and McCartney's songwriting partnership truly was.